Caesar talk about the empty tomb? Well, not directly, but we do have an incredible piece of evidence in antiquity that's called the Nazareth inscription. They discovered this in Nazareth, hence the name. But what's significant about Nazareth? This is the city where Jesus grew up. He's called Jesus of Nazareth, so that town is associated with him. And Nazareth is this kind of podunk town, certainly less than 1,000 people. And the Caesar of the Roman Empire decides that it's important to send this edict to this town. Listen to this. Edict of Caesar. If anyone has in any manner extracted those who have been buried, oh wow, he's talking about people being removed out of tombs, or has moved with wicked intent those who have been buried to other places, committing a crime against them, or has moved sepulcher sealing stones, tomb sealing stones, I wish that that person would suffer capital punishment. So here you find the most powerful man in the ancient world that finds it necessary to send an edict. And by the way, he reigns from 41 to 54 AD, within 2 decades of the crucifixion resurrection. He finds it necessary to send an edict to Nazareth talking about bodies being removed out of tombs. Why? Because news of an empty tomb was turning his empire upside down.
Well, this seems like a plausible story. I mean, if this Nazarene inscription was written by Emperor Claudius, by which he did not name, but Emperor Claudius, who reigned from 41 to 54 CE, then that would be a huge implication in the historicity of Christianity. One, it would mean that Christianity began a lot earlier than the Flavians indicate that they started Christianity. It would completely annihilate that theory. It would also validate the fact that, according to the story, Claudius expelled Jews from the city of Rome. And since at that time frame, Christianity would have been considered as a subsect of Judaism, that the Acts 18, the stories of Aquila and Priscilla, then those will be validated when they met Paul, since they had left from Italy. These things seem, on the surface, to validate the Bible. But does it truly validate the Bible? Not so much. You see, there is a reason, and I just gave you, that they chose Emperor Claudius from 41 to 54 because of his expulsion of Jews in 49 CE. But the problem in it being during that time frame is that once the language of the inscription is studied and the isotopes from the actual stone has been analyzed, we come to realize a few things. Well, one of the things that we come to realize is the fact that within the language of it, it talks about the desecration of graves. Well, we know that under Roman law, well prior to Claudius, that Cicero in 43 BCE indicated that under Roman law, it was already illegal to desecrate graves in the Roman Empire. And we also see that there are many artifacts of tombs, grave sites, that have curses placed on them to try to stop people from robbing graves. So robbing graves or desecrating graves was already a popular thing and something that was going on throughout the Roman Empire. As a matter of fact, it is most likely that this edict was written based on Augustus Caesar, who, although Nicaeus, who was a tyrannical governor of the Greek island of Kos, was an enemy to him because he was supported by Mark Antony. And we know Mark Antony fought against Augustus Caesar for rulership over the Roman Empire after Julius Caesar died, that Nicaeus' body was exhumed, beaten, dragged down the street, chopped up into pieces. And although he was an enemy, this was still a problem of people desecrating graves. So even as a Roman emperor, it's possible that he could have been writing in about Nicaeus. Now, why Nicaeus? Because isotopes from the backside of the stone indicate that the marble in question here that the inscription is written on actually comes from the Isle of Kos, the Greek Isle of Kos, not the Roman quarries that are within Galilee and outside of Galilee, but from Kos. And why wouldn't they have quarried these rocks from Nazareth if the Roman Empire had control over it? Well, the problem is that the Roman Empire never gained control of Galilee and Nazareth until 44 BCE. So not until 44 BCE did they have power over it. And the matter of fact, the principalities that was ruling Galilee at that time frame, who were vassal states still to Rome, but not under Roman law, were ran by Sumerian kings. And this, as you further look at the language by which the inscription is written, the fact that they utilize and how they utilize the word Caesar would indicate that it is most likely written by a Sumerian or some Hellenistic person within the Diacolis. Now, the Diacolis are the 10 Hellenized cities in the Levant, west of Galilee, that were controlled by Rome. Also, because of the usage of the word gods, that's pluralized, this also indicates that it's most likely written by these someone in the Hellenistic cities of the Diacolis. But the stone certainly comes from the Greek island of Kros. Now, the language also indicates that it could have been written anytime between 50 BCE up to 50 CE. So we have a huge swath of time that it could actually have been written. That does not necessarily mean it was written by Claudius. And when we further delve into why Claudius expelled the Jewish population, Claudius expelled the Jewish population, according to Suetonius, because of the agitation of Crestius. Now, many have tried to say that what Suetonius was talking about when he mentioned Crestius was that he was talking about Christians and the combat, the fighting that they were having between one another, and that this created a disruption. And since Christians were looked at as a subset of Judaism, that he expelled them all out. But truth be told is that in Suetonius, who was born in 69 CE and died in 22 CE, Suetonius actually never talked about Christians until he was writing the Annals of Nero and in Nero 19. So in Claudius 45, when he said Crestius, he was actually talking about an individual person. Now we know that in 19 that Tiberius expelled some Jews out of Rome simply because of one individual Jewish person who took advantage of a Roman noblewoman, and that Jews were then expelled for that. Some Jews were. This is also why it's looked at as hyperbole that Suetonius said all Jews. Now, even prior to that, in around 39 BCE, there was a time frame when Jews were also expelled for trying to preach to Romans and convert Romans into Judaism. So Jews have been expelled from Rome on multiple occasions. Claudius was expelling Jews out of Rome because of Jews agitating the Roman government, because he thought that they were trying to defraud the Roman government. But when you look at what Claudius actually did, he did not just specifically remove Jews from Rome, but he removed many different ethnic foreign people out of Rome in 49. It is just the focus that Christians put on it is just the Jewish people. So this doesn't always work. And one of the biggest issues that we have is the fact that it is called the Nazarene inscription. When we look at the founding of this document, it wasn't found until 1870. It was found in 1870 by Wilhelm Faulkner. Wilhelm Faulkner was an antiquities collector and a curator of the Louvre Museum in Paris. In his travels in and around the Levant and what he would have called the Far East, or the Middle East, Near East, would have called the Near East, he collected many items and shipped them back to Paris. In the Levant, and in 1870, Jerusalem and Nazareth were big hubs for antiquities collection and antiquities dealings. And that is where he acquired it while he was in Nazareth. And on the bill of shipment, he wrote that this is a stone, an inscription that he's sending from Nazareth. There is nothing that indicates that it was found in Nazareth. He could have found it in Kros, had it with him when he got to Nazareth, and shipped it along with other antiquities to Paris, and it's just being shipped from Nazareth. Christians like to use these types of stretches in order to validate Christianity as a historical religion, as historical validation. But what we see time and time again is that it fails when it's measured against the criteria of truth. So always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey.